Hey everyone, it's Nooch, and welcome to the first installment of Nooch Tears. No, Nooch is not crying, but Nooch has tears. Ogres have layers, onions have layers. Tears like a tear cake. Alright, you can see it. It's on the screen, you can see it, you know what I'm talking about. So we're going to talk about every card in the game. We're going to talk about where it falls on here. Some of you are already looking at the Nooch tiers and cussing Nooch under your breath and talking about that card doesn't belong there, that card's awesome, this card sucks, whatever. And that's the great thing about LEGO Star Wars Battles, because even in the beta, these cards, when used properly, can fall anywhere on the spectrum. So this is really an opinion, but it's an opinion based on not only Nooch's gameplay, but paying attention to the discussions and gameplay of the other players that are in the beta and on Discord talking about it every day. So, without any delay, let's get to the first installment of Nooch Tears. So, at the bottom, we've got Poodoo. So, these are the worst cards. These are Poodoo. Don't use these cards. And we're going to start from the right to the left because these cards are ranked at the very bottom. So the worst card in the deck right now is Princess Leia, which kind of stinks because Nooch had a big crush on her. Maybe Nooch's first love back when Nooch was a boy. It's Princess Leia. But her card is so dependent on very precise gameplay. She has to be surrounded by units, and her special gives those units a charge up. So they attack a little faster and do more damage. But the problem is she's got to have units around her for her special to work. And you can easily negate that, like when she shoots off her special, just drop a seismic charge on it, or drop a bomb on it, and it's all dead, and then her special's useless. So Nooch doesn't have her yet. I've only seen one player that's actually used her, and other players have tried her and really aren't impressed. So Leia's at the bottom. Next is the light side and dark side missile launchers. Now, if you watch Nooch's Phasma-tastic video, you got Phasma'd. If you watch that video, in one of those attacks, a lone stormtrooper by himself almost takes out one of these missile launchers. They just don't have enough health, and they don't do enough damage. I get the idea. They're supposed to do, if you drop a missile launcher in the middle, it can actually do damage against one of the towers on the other side. The problem is the damage is so small, and that missile launcher is so easy to kill, it's just not worth putting on the field. Next comes Yoda. Now, Nooch just joined the game about a month ago, and apparently Yoda used to be awesome, jumping around towers, destroying them, and then he got nerfed. And now, much like Princess Leia, his special ability depends on very precise management of what's going on. Because what he does is he puts up a force field around him that protects himself and the units around him. It doesn't stop them from taking damage, or doesn't stop Yoda from taking damage, because towers are still damaging Yoda while his shield is up. He's just taking less damage. The thing is that you've got to time it perfectly. And I've seen it done once or twice, but for the most part, it's really difficult to get Yoda on top of a tower while you've also got Porgs or Ewoks or something else on top of a tower and launch his special while those things do damage. Now, if you can time it out, it's really nice, but it's very difficult to get that timing right. Okay, let's move up a tier. Let's move up to Sergeant. So at the bottom of our Sergeant pool is C2B5. Now, he's a nice guy because he can heal up towers, and that's what C2B5 and R2 do. The reason that R2 and C2 aren't together and R2's up a level is because the Rebels get a little more usage out of healing towers up. The Rebels can play more of a defensive game sometimes, whereas the Empire, or excuse me, I want to say Rebels and Empire, the light side, the dark side. The dark side has a little more ability to push and make a push down the field and attack towers, where the Rebels kind of hang back and defend and then launch porgs and balls at everybody and make some damage. So on the dark side team, a healing unit that heals towers just doesn't have quite as much value because you're not playing much defense. Next is the Gungan Gang. Now, Nooch played around a little bit with these guys, and they're kind of interesting because it's a gang of 3 Gungans, and they launch little tiny boomer balls, just like they did in the movie and in the stories. And those boomer balls give tiny degrees of stun to the target. The problem is that they're all grouped together, so they're pretty easy to take out or stun themselves with a seismic charge or a bomb. And they do almost no damage. Like, they're stunning a unit, but there's no damage. And since they cost 4, they really take up a lot of space in your energy for not causing any damage. If they were 3, they might move up a couple of tiers, because then you just need to stun a unit, bring in somebody else like Luke, and then he can do the killing. So they've got some opportunity there, but right now the Gungan Gang is down in the Sergeant section. Rebel Commandos. Again, because you're defending, these Commandos don't have a lot of use. It seems like the Commandos and the Stormtroopers are really more for pushing. They've got good health, medium-sized damage, they cost 3, they're not a horrible unit, but they just don't seem to fit with that Rebel defense mode as much as some other units do. So that's why they end up here in the Sergeant tier. Next we got Moroff. Neutral admit, he's heard that Moroff can do some really awesome things. And you can see when Moroff gets that gun going that it does a lot of damage. The problem is he's really squishy, and he takes a couple seconds to load up that gun. And by the time he's loaded it up, half the time, because of all the stuns on the field, I mean, the dark side has your seismic charge, they've got your destroyer droid, and they've got BB-9. So he's very easy to stun and just take out of action entirely while he's trying to get his shot loaded up. So you really have to play him behind other tanks. And again, the Rebels, the light side's advantage is defending more than pushing and attacking. So if you can find a way to push with them, and Nooch's going to play around with him a little bit because he seems pretty cool, but just haven't found a way to make that work yet. Coming up next is the Riot Control Walker. Not sure why this is not an ATST. It sure looks like an ATST, but I guess it's not. Anyway, it's okay. The problem is that it's on the dark side, and it's easily countered by Porgs and or Ewoks, which are some of the best units in the game. So, and also some of the best units that the Rebels have, the light side has. So the Riot Control Walker just doesn't really fit too well on that dark side roster. Coming up next, we've grouped the Probe Droid and the Duros Alliance Fighter together. They are the same unit. They fly, they do damage from above. The one advantage they have, and it might give the Probe Droid the Duros Fighter a little bit of advantage over the Probe Droid, but not much, is they can shoot at a flame tower and take no damage at all. So if the opponent's got a flame tower up, and you'll see flame towers more for the dark side, is because they're defending against Porgs and Ewoks, groups of units, but it's not enough to really separate these guys. They both belong in the Sergeant pool. Boba Fett is also a Sergeant, and while he is cool, and we all want to love Boba Fett, his special, even when it comes available and you push the button to hit the special, it takes another 3 or 4 seconds to load and get off the shots. And it shoots at units all around him, so that's pretty good because the Rebels have a lot of those multi-unit, and we've talked about that, Porgs, Ewoks, etc. But he's vulnerable while he's getting his special loaded up, so he's up in the air, getting his special ready, and I don't know, half the time he gets killed before he even gets it off. So because his special takes so long to load, even though it is effective, he falls into this Sergeant pool. And last card in the Sergeant is the Clone Flametrooper. Now it's the same card as the First Order Flametrooper. The only difference is that the Imperials are not coming with a lot of those bulk units. So the Flametroopers, they are tanky, and that's nice, but they're really intended to attack a large group of units. So the First Order Flametrooper is going to attack a bunch of Porgs and wipe them out quickly. A bunch of Ewoks, wipe them out quickly. The Clone Flametrooper, who is a Sergeant, is really only good, not only good, but primarily good against battle droids. And battle droids, as you can see, are kind of flimsy already, and you can take them out with a lot of units. So there's not a lot of value with that clone Flametrooper, especially at 4, even though he's the same unit as a First Order Flametrooper. All right, moving up to captains. We've got the Rebel AT-RT. Now, this has a little more value, the light side AT-RT. This has a little more value for the light side than it does for the dark side, because this is the same unit as the Riot Control Walker, or I'm just going to call it the AT-ST. So it has a little more value for the light side because the dark side does not have as many group units. We just talked about that. They've got the battle droids, and that's about it. So this unit, one-on-one against another unit, can be very effective and can serve as a really good tank. So it's a little more effective on the light side of the board. 2 Stormtroopers. Now, this is debatable because Nooch has found a really good niche for these guys to use with Phasma. Because Phasma's is generating Stormtroopers with her special. And if you have more Stormtroopers on the board, you just get a flock or a squadron of Stormtroopers. That said, that makes them a little better than the Commandos on their own. And they're also a little better than the Commandos because you're fighting multiple units. A couple of Stormtroopers can take out a half or more of a flock of porgs, so with a little bit of help. So they come in a little bit above the Rebel Commandos, even though they are the same unit. Next, the Tuscan Raider. Nooch has not found a lot of use for this guy. He's a melee unit, hitting people with his baton. And he's okay. Again, the problem is he's on the dark side, and you can really take care of him pretty easily with flock of porgs, BB-8, Ewoks, or even 3 porgs. So there's a lot of ways to kill the Tuscan from the light side of things, and that's why he doesn't have as much value. If you had a light side Tuscan Raider kind of unit, that could be pretty valuable because you're only fighting single units. You really want to drop him directly in a tower if you can. Chewbacca. So Chewbacca suffers from the same things as these other units. Chewbacca does area damage, so he shoots his bowcaster and kills 4 battle droids at a time. And that's nice, and he's kind of tanky too, which is also nice. But again, a lot of units can kill battle droids. In fact, if you launch a battalion of battle droids directly on somebody's X-Wing, and it's not right on top of it, the X-Wing will kill all of them but without taking any damage. So that's why Chewbacca's value is limited, because that's where most of his value is in fighting those battle droids on the dark side. Next up is our dark side particle beam, for the same reasons as other units. Dark side particle beam is the particle beams in general. You see that the light side one is going to be up a level. They are outstanding at defending against single units. If you're fighting with just single units, you're going against a particle beam, you better stun that thing or bring in some extra helpers to kill it, because it's going to wipe out a tank or any single unit fast, quick, destructively. Unfortunately, as I stated earlier, the Rebels are coming with porgs and Ewoks and more porgs and sometimes troopers, lots of multi-units, and lots of stunning with the Booma Balls and BB-8. So there's a lot of stunning in the game, period. But so you can stun a particle beam. You could launch BB-8 from the other side of the field, and if it gets all the way down there, it'll stun that particle beam and just sit there and stun until something else kills it. Unless that particle beam is already spinning hard, then it kills the BB-8. Otherwise, the BB-8 stuns it all on its own. So pretty limited, especially when you're facing the light side with multiple units coming at you. Which is the same reason that the light side flame tower is also a captain and doesn't make it into the top tier, because it's fighting against the dark side, and the dark side's coming with lots of individual units. The flame tower is really effective against flocks of porgs and Ewoks, or on the light side against battle droids. Really effective against those, less effective against single units, and it's out of range not only of the flying units like the Duros fighter or the Pro Droid, but the Super Battle Droid can stand out of range of that flame tower and kill it. I believe that Moroff also does that as well, but again, Nooch needs to play with him a little more, and he takes so long to load. By the time he's loaded up to kill it from out of range, something has stunned him. R2-D2. Nooch struggled with this one. Nooch likes R2-D2. Not only in the game, R2-D2 is one of the best characters in the movies, and he's in every movie. The challenge with R2-D2 is he is healing those towers back up, and he can cause a lot of frustration for your enemy. If you're playing somebody and they get your tower down within bomber range, and you heal it right back up again before they can bomb it again, that can be a major frustration to your opponent. But that's the only real time that he has a lot of value. He's using him in like that defensive posture. So if you want to go offensive with rebels, which again, as I stated earlier, is a little tougher to do, but if you want to go offensive, you don't really need that guy back there healing because you're attacking their towers. I like R2 a lot, but just couldn't quite get him up above the captain level. The Droid Factory. Oh, again, like this unit, but it's so flimsy. A bomber takes it out, and a lot of people's and Booba Balls take it out. Booba Balls can even go through an entire squadron of battle droids and almost take out that factory. The other problem is it's spawning battle droids, and that's nice, but battle droids will die before they even get a shot off against your tower. I believe they get one shot against a flame tower, but they get 0 shots against other towers. And so they're putting some pressure on if you can get other units on the field, but they're so vulnerable to Booba Balls. A bomber takes it right out, and the battle droids in general just aren't all that effective, so that's why it falls into the captain tier. The Clone Bomb Squad Trooper. Now, Nooch actually likes this guy and does use him, even with his defense. However, he falls into the same trap. He's good against bulk units. He's good against the Porgs. He's not good against the Porgs. He plays with the Porgs. He's good against the battle droids. He's really good against the battle droids. If you get a battalion of battle droids coming down, the bomb trooper will take them all out without taking a bit of damage. He's a beast when it comes to that. He's also a little bit tanky, and Nooch does enjoy him. So Nooch uses him in some decks, even though he's in the captain mode. That's why he's at the top of it. But he is limited just because fighting against single units, he's not as effective. Let's move up to the top part of our tiers, the general tier. And we start off with the Clone Turbo Tank. I put the Clone Turbo Tank next to the AT-AT, but didn't put them together in this because I think the AT-AT's a little bit better. And the reason is the same thing we've been talking about. The Empire plays offense, the Rebs generally play defense. They're not that much different. The Clone Turbo Tank has a slower attack time, but does more damage per hit than the AT-AT does. But the AT-AT hits quicker for less damage each time. They end up doing the same thing, and they're both tanks. They're both easily negated by a BB-8 or a BB-9. So they're very limited, but if you get a tower rush on somebody, you get a tower in their end, and you drop a tank on them at the right moment, their X-Wing or their TIE Fighter is dead. So we're going to talk about those guys together, but I didn't put them together because they're different units. They're a little bit different. So they're effective, but you got to find the right way to use them. They're very effective if you use them the right way. The Ewok Treehouse, a favorite of Nooch's, although the higher you get, the tougher it is to use because the Booba Balls are so fantastic. But this treehouse spawns Ewoks. Now, the thing it has it better than the Droid Factory, even though it costs more, is that the Ewoks will get 1, 2, 3 hits in a tower before they die. They'll even get a couple hits on a flame tower, and if your opponent has a flame tower in the middle and you've got Ewok towers on either side, those Ewoks will take out that middle flame tower even though they're taking damage from it. So the Ewoks are just a more effective unit than the battle droids by a pretty good margin, and that's why the Ewok Treehouse comes in a level above the Droid Factory. Now we get into the particle beam, the light side particle beam, and the dark side flame tower. We told you the reasons for those. They're a level higher than their counterparts just because of the units they're fighting. They're both really effective in what they do. It's just that I'm not going to say it again. You know who the dark side's fighting, and you know who the light side's fighting, and that's why. We put the turbo lasers together. These guys are not great at shooting people, but they got a significant amount of health. They can take a beating, and they can take a licking, and maybe you bring in your healing droid and heal them back up, and they can take another beating. So they're like your standing tank. They are going to stand their ground, and make your opponent come through them. And they're both about the same. You might give an edge to the light side one because the dark side one is a little bit more vulnerable to those porgs and Ewoks, but really they're basically the same. They have the same function on both sides. The Destroyer Droid. Nooch really enjoys playing with the Destroyer Droid. He stuns everybody as he rolls into battle. He stuns everyone in the way. Then he turns around and starts firing, and as soon as he starts firing, he gets a shield. When he's not firing, he has no shield. And he can push tanks backward away from your towers. He's got a lot of multiple uses. At 4, he's a tiny bit expensive because he doesn't do a lot of damage when he shoots, which is a little weird, but I guess if you had him do a lot of damage, you'd be completely OP and you couldn't use him. But he's very useful, and he's a very good unit to have in your deck. The Ewoks. Nooch loves the Ewoks. I got a tip today for them. So if you're on the Rebel side and you're playing a little defense, you got 2 towers up on your end, and your opponent puts a tower right in that middle section, just drop the Ewoks on it immediately. They'll just take that tower right out. Because the tower, as it's loading, as that new tower is coming online, the Ewoks will already be doing damage, and by the time it comes around and starts shooting, it's too far down. The Ewoks have taken it out. These guys are really good. They will just take out units. Their range damage is awesome. They shoot quickly. They take out stormtroopers. Of course, they take out stormtroopers. You know, they're just a really good unit to have on your Rebel squad. And then right next to that is the battle droids. Struggle with the Ewoks and battle droids. They're very similar. If you use the battle droids effectively, they're a really good unit. It's just hard to use them effectively. One of the best approaches I've seen is to drop them on your end in the middle and then let them fan out on either side of the middle bunkers. Because you don't really want to spend a boomer ball to kill them when they're over there, and you got them come on both sides so they can offer support on both sides. So try that next time you use them to support some unit that's already moving downfield and put a little pressure on the other side as well. Moving up to our Admirals. There's a trap! At the bottom of the tier, we've got your 2 battle droids for 1 energy and your 1 stormtrooper for 1 energy. The reason that they're at the bottom is they don't have a lot to offer. Although, like I mentioned before, I had 1 stormtrooper almost take out a missile launcher by himself. But, regardless, by themselves, they're not a great unit there. But what they do is they cycle through your deck. So if you want to get back to that bomber quickly because you got your opponent sitting there within bomber range to kill his tower, and that'll get you the win, you want those 1 energy units in there, cycle, put them, get to that bomber, kill. So they're very effective that way. The stormtrooper comes in ahead because he survives a little bit longer. He's got more health and he can do a little more damage while he's out there. The Guavian security officer, Nooch just absolutely loves this guy. Love. This guy is a little bit tanky, a lot of area damagey, and he's fun to watch. I mean, the damage he does. He launches a volley of grenades, and they may go. So they're just fun. It's just fun to play with him. And when they win, and he's on the board, he does backflips. I don't know what's better than that. So if you can use the Guavian security officer, it's very similar to the the First Order Flametrooper. Got him rated a little bit higher, the Flametrooper, just because he's more tanky. But both of them can take out a flock of porgs, a group of Ewoks, the 1 energy 3 porgs. They're both really, really effective for that. And when you combine them with a unit with a tank like Darth Vader, or you combine him with a super battle droid or Phasma, they can really protect those units because they do take out those porgs and Ewoks. The super battle droid. This guy is awesome. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, he can stand out of range of a flame tower and does like 200 or 250 damage. I mean, he's just crushing that tower. Does a ton of damage to towers, does a lot of damage to pretty much every unit on the board. He's slow, but he's tanky, and he shoots in the air. This guy is a really effective, versatile, tanky unit to have on your board at any time with the dark side. Coming up next are our 2 legendaries, the yin and the yang, father and son, Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. Again, like in my top 10, I rated Luke a little bit higher than Darth Vader. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. They're both super tanky. They've got a ton of health. They walk down the field slow. You can put stuff behind them, have a rush, get it going. They can both defend in their own end. Luke's special fans out in front of him. Darth Vader's special makes a circle around him. They're both awesome. Darth Vader might be a little better at killing stuff, but Luke can wipe out a whole battalion of battle droids with his special. So, just a preference there. Nooch likes Luke a little bit better, but they're really very, very similar and about equal in the game. The First Order Flametrooper. So this guy is tanky and deadly. He counters exactly what the Rebels, the light side, is good at. He counters Porgs. He counters Ewoks. He counters even BB-8. This guy can take out Cassian. He can take out everything except the boomer balls. He's just a really great unit. And if you pair him with your Darth Vader, with your tank, or with your Phasma, he can protect them until Kingdom Come, until they get their special loaded. He's a really good unit. Next up is probably, I think, my most controversial placement, and it is Captain Phasma in the Admiral tier. The Chrome Dome is Phasmatastic. And I think I'm going to keep saying that you got Phasma. So if you watch Nooch's Phasmatastic video, you're going to see some of the first battles that Nooch fought with Phasma, and they are all 5-stud wins. If you can get her going down one side of the board and distract your opponent a little bit on the other side of the board, she can spawn troops a couple times by the time she gets down to the end of the X-Wing. That gives you so many troops. Now they're susceptible to bombing runs. Nooch gets it. Nooch totally gets it. But they got to spend it to kill her, don't they? And they usually let her get pretty far down the board before they do spend it. Nooch loves Phasma. She's just a lot of fun. Any unit that spawns other units, if used properly, can be really deadly and really dangerous, especially if you get a forward tower that you can drop her close to the enemy X-Wing. She can really cause a lot of havoc. Coming up next are the snipers, Cassian and IG-88. Now, they got nerfed about a month ago, and they were doing a ton of damage before the nerf, a massive ton of damage. Now they're doing 60% less damage per second. So they are not doing quite as much damage. They're very fragile. Almost one stormtrooper can take out an IG-IR Cassian if you drop it at the right moment. But the thing is, they're still really effective. If you drop them opposite of everything or behind enemy lines, if they sit there, they'll take out a tower in 5 or 6 shots. They're really effective. They have to be dealt with by your enemy. The reason they don't make it to the Moff tier is simply because they tend to give your opponent a lot of value on a bomber run. So unless you place Cassian or IG-88 completely away from everything, they're going to end up at some point next to one of your towers or next to some of your units. And then your opponent's going to do a bomber run, and when they hit Cassian or IG-88, they're going to do damage to those other units or that tower. And that's why they don't quite get to Moff, because they're so fragile, and you might give your opponent a bunch of value for killing them, and that's never what you want to do. The flock of porgs. Why aren't these in the Moff tier? Why? It was a tough decision. It's a tough decision. Go watch Pork Balls. But it was a tough decision. The only reason that they are at the top, the very tippy top of the Admiral tier and not in the Moff tier is because it costs 3 for 7 porgs. But with the 3 porgs, I can buy 3 of them for 1. So just on value alone, you get more value with the 3 porgs than the flock of porgs. Now that said, if you play these guys right, they can take out any unit on the field. If you let a Flametrooper or a Grenadier engage another enemy or a tower, you drop the porgs behind them, they kill them in a heartbeat. They kill giant tanks. They kill probe droids. I mean, they jump up in the sky and they can kill Vader as long as you don't. You got to get them there before or after the special. Don't get them on the special. They're dead. These guys are awesome, and I recommend playing with porgs at every opportunity, and they're especially great as a defensive weapon. So use those porgs, use them often. Nooch has them in all his decks. Didn't quite make them off just because of the value. And finally, here we have it, the coup de grace, the Moff tier. These are our best units of the game. It's very difficult to find an opponent who's not using all of these cards in their deck. All of them. So on the dark side, we'll talk about it as a group first. On the dark side, almost every deck has the Bomber, the Seismic Charge Slave 1, and BB-9 in it. They're just so dang good. And on the light side, almost every deck, once you get the Boomer Balls, has Boomer Balls, the Y-Wing, the 3 Porgs, and the BB-8. They're almost impossible to not put in your deck. Almost impossible. And that's why all of these are in the Moff tier, because they're indispensable units in the game. Let's start with the Seismic Charge. So the Seismic Charge can be targeted anywhere on the field of play. It has a wide blast radius, does enough damage to take out a sniper or a flock of porgs or a group of Ewoks. And it stuns everything while it's doing that. So it can be used really well if you've got a single unit approaching a tower. Like you've got, let's say you've got Phasma and her 2 troopers approaching a particle beam. That particle beam will wipe out Phasma before she can even sneeze. Or before she can sell out the First Order for some reason. Anyway, but what you can do, if you time it right, is as soon as Phasma gets close, you drop the Seismic Charge. It stuns everything in there. If they dropped any porgs down to get it, it kills them all. And then Phasma can fire away with her troops on the particle beam. Same is true for flame towers or any tower. It can also play great defense if you've got a bunch, as you mentioned, the light side using porgs, and more Ewoks. If you got a bunch of those coming at you at once, one Seismic Charge will kill all of them. And with the wide blast radius it has, it is deadly. It is in every deck that you play against and play with. BB-8 and BB-9, this is the next video Nooch has coming out. These guys are unstunning believable. Unbelievable. If you've got any unit on the field that is engaged in another unit, you can drop it behind there and they will stun it and do chip damage, eventually kill it, hold it still, hold it in place so it can't attack anything. As I mentioned before, it can go all the way down the field of play and stun a particle beam tower, and sometimes, if you get lucky, it can stun any other tower if that tower wasn't looking the right way when BB-8 or BB-9 was coming. And stunning a tower is one of the most effective things you can do in this game, whether with Seismic Charge or BB-8, BB-9, or Boomer Balls, because then your opponent has an advantage against that tower, and then you have to deal with it. If your tower gets stunned, if BB-8 or BB-9 is sitting on your tower and you're at 2 energy and you have no 1 or 2 energy units, you just got to sit there and watch it until you can drop something on the field while your opponent is also saving energy. BB-8 and BB-9 are amazing. The 3 porgs for 1 energy. Again, these guys are the reason that the flock of porgs is not in the Moff section. You can drop the 3 porgs if you, let's say a First Order Flametrooper that costs 4, comes down, starts flaming your tower. Drop the 3 porgs behind it, it's dead in a heartbeat, your tower's barely hurt at all, put an R2, heal it up, then the 3 porgs advance down the field, and he's got to deal with them. Your opponent has to deal with them. They're 3 porgs. 3 porgs will take out a sniper, they take out a stormtrooper, they'll do damage again. They can take out a tank eventually. 3 porgs are really nasty, and they only cost 1, so you can also use them to cycle. Same thing with BB-8, BB-9. As I mentioned before, if you've got let's say you've got your opponent to within 1 bomber run, and it's desperate. You got to get that bomber run before them, or they're going to win. Both your towers are at 450, and you got a 460 bomber. Whoever gets the bomber first, cycle, bomber. That's what these 1 energy cards can do, and that's why these energy cards, BB-8, BB-9, and the 3 porgs, are in the Moff section, because you can lay them down. They will find a way to make themselves useful while also cycling through your deck and getting you to really important units as well. Next up, the Y-Wing and the TIE Bomber. Nooch has seen decks without every other card in the tiers. Nooch has never seen a deck without a bomber in it. It may have happened, and Nooch wasn't paying attention. But Nooch probably won that fight. Bombers are the most important card in the game. And I've said it before, you should upgrade them as quickly as possible because they are hidden offense. Your opponent has no idea what level your bombers are at. So if you've got a bomber that somehow is 2 levels higher than everything else on the field, and you can do that much more damage to a tower, you have a supreme advantage in that game. And we're going to get to it at some point here to show that there's a strategy for just bombing the X-Wing or bombing Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. Just running bombing runs while playing defense. Just bomb it, play defense. Bomb it again, play defense. Bomb it again, play defense. So if your bombers are big enough, they can really age in that strategy. But let alone that, the bigger your bombers are, the quicker you can destroy towers. And the more damage you can do to units anywhere on the field. You don't have to wait till they march down and get there. You can use them anytime, and you want to cycle through to those bombers as often as you can to do as much damage as possible. Never seen a deck without a bomber in it. And finally, the Boomer Balls are the best card in the game. These things are so versatile. We talked about the seismic charges, really wide blast radius. We talked about the bombers and their massive amounts of damage. The Boomer Balls are the best of both worlds. They do the damage of a bomber. They have a blast radius that's the entire length of the field. You can see exactly where they're going, the same as you can with the seismic charge and the bombers. You know where they're going. They stun everything in their path, and whatever gets through kills the towers. They do a ton of tower damage. A ton. If you get all those Boomer Balls on one tower, you can really maul that thing and destroy it. The reason the Boomer Balls come in ahead of everything else is just because they are perfect support for the light side. So when you've got Porgs or Ewoks going down, let's say that your opponent just uses seismic charge. So you know that you've got a while before they can cycle back to it again, and you launch Porgs and Ewoks to go down the field, even toward a flame tower. If you hit that flame tower with Boomer Balls at the precise right moment, it can kill like half of its health, and then you watch it get stunned while the Porgs and the Ewoks or whoever takes it out with no damage to them because you stunned and did all the damage. Boomer Balls, without a doubt, the best unit in the game. And that's it. That's every card in the game. We've stacked them, we've tiered them, we've ranked them, we've explained them. You've cussed at me under your breath and told me that's stupid because you use Ewok Treehouse and it's the best, it should be a Moff, or the Flock of Porgs is stupid, it should be a Captain. Whatever. That's fine. That's why we're here to play. It's just a lot of fun. And again, any of these units used in the right way can really be effective. It's just that some of them require a lot more micromanagement and a higher skill level to use them. So one thing Nooch is going to do for you guys is he's going to start playing with some Poodoo. So Nooch is going to play for a while with the bottom tiers, the bottom 3 tiers, and not use anything in the top 3 tiers. So no Boomer Balls, no Bombers, no BB-8s. No idea how it's going to work. And we've only got enough cards down there for, like 8 of each side, 8 or 9 of each side. So it's going to be a very limited deck. But we're going to try it and see what kind of success we can have. And we'll come back with a video on that in a while because we've already got a few loaded up in the meantime. So that's it for the first installment of Nooch Tiers. I hope you enjoyed it. Come back for more. Drop some comments down. Let Nooch know why you believe in a certain unit that should be higher, or why Nooch is rating anything too high and it should be lower. Nooch wants to hear. Let's have a nice little well-rounded debate where we respect each other and deal with each other on an adult or mostly adult basis. That's all we got for you today. We'll see you next time.